You're listening to the Experience Matters podcast, powered by Officium Labs. Each episode will focus on one challenge, talk to two experts, and offer 3 innovative solutions to propel you forward. It's the 1-2-3 punch to accelerate your customer experience results. Here's your host, Nate Brown.
All right. Hello and welcome to this episode of the Experience Matters podcast. We've got 2 incredible people on the podcast today, Jeannie Walters, Brian Carlson. We're going to be talking about patient experience, how we can shift our mentality around this and make it something that we're excited for, that we're all contributing towards together. If you're not a patient experience pro, don't worry. There's going to be plenty of wisdom in this episode for anybody that's doing the work of CX. So we're thrilled you're here. We're thrilled you're taking the time to invest in yourself and to get some wisdom from these 2 incredible people. So let me introduce you to Jeannie Walters. Jeannie Walters has been an inspirational figure for me in the area of CX. So kind, so wise, so generous with her knowledge, and just an overall incredible person. Welcome, Jeannie, and thanks for being here.
Thank you, Nate. That's so nice. Thank you so much for saying that.
So what got you interested and involved in this topic of patient experience?
Mm-hmm. Well, I've been focused on customer experience for about 20 years. And several years ago, my family and I were actually in a car accident. And to see it up close and personal, not just through my eyes as a patient, but also as an advocate for my family, really made me realize there are a lot of people doing incredible things. And it's a matter of kind of harnessing those CX best practices in some cases and really looking through a different lens. So I became pretty passionate about it after that.
I love it. I've been saying more and more that experiences are the building blocks of life.
Yes.
And some experiences are critical. Some experiences help to define you. Some, don't really matter that much in the grand scheme of time, but definitely impact your day to day. When we're talking about healthcare and patient experience, these are absolutely some of the building blocks of life. And nobody knows that better than Brian Carlson. Brian is the VP of Patient Experience at Vanderbilt, has been doing incredible work in this field for many years. Hello, Brian, and thank you for being here, sir.
Hello, Nate. Thank you so much for having me.
Love it. And what got you into this work?
Yeah, so I got into healthcare right out of college in the administrative realm, and I've been a healthcare administrator my whole career, but really moved into the patient experience space about 11 years ago. And what the calling really was is healthcare is a calling.
Yeah,
for everybody who works in it, because you're touching people's lives in so many different ways when they're their most vulnerable times. And I think that there's not only the patient experience, but there's the caregiver experience of seeing the rewards and the fruits that come from making someone feel better or curing somebody. And to be part of that team and deliver on those great outcomes is just amazing.
Wow. Yeah, I've been using that word calling as well, because we've been seeing the trend line of stress and worry and anger in the United States and in the world just go like this. And so the work of CX is making people's lives better and easier, taking that stress out, adding some harmony into our daily lives. And I mean, it is made most clear in this space right here when people are most vulnerable. I love your thought process there, Brian. We talk about experiences where somebody is showing up to a theme park and the experience is designed to be fun, to make them happy. But when we talk about patient experience, it's an experience designed to heal, to cure, to make them feel good.
Yeah, we see people at their worst times, not at their best. So.
And the amount of intelligence, the amount of intentionality in the way we design an experience for that audience, it's remarkable. And if we can apply just even some of that intentionality into the everyday customer experience, we're going to be way ahead of the curve. So let's jump right in with a challenge statement. Forgive me, reframing our perspective around patient experience. Hopefully, we're already starting to do that. Just in terms of the way you think about this, we are all a patient at some point in our lives. We're all a caregiver. We're all in a hospital or a care facility. We're all going through physical therapy. This is something that if you're not going through now, you will at some point as a patient. And there's tens of thousands and millions on the other side of that coin that are literally creating and offering up this experience. So how can we help a system that is often being described as broken and so frustrating, and we use all these negative acronyms, but yet there's so much great things that are going on in the healthcare space. And we can, today on this podcast, we can add a nice little push just of encouragement, of a little bit of wisdom from these two incredible people as we reframe our perspective on patient experience. So let's come in, Jeannie, with punch number one. How do we do this? How do we think about it? Oh, whoa, somebody, you're the first person to show up prepared for the round one. I love it. So, Jeannie, how do we equip our patients with the tools to navigate this journey?
Yeah, well, I think it's really important to understand their journey, right? And a lot of times when we're talking about patient experience within the context of addressing it, that's coming from one health system. They think that this is the journey that somebody has in our system, or it comes from one modality, right? Like this is what it's like to be a physical therapy patient or something like that. But we really have to think about the customer, the patient's whole life, and what it really looks like, and their ecosystem, because they're going to decide kind of how to apply these things. And yet we might think that they don't have all the tools to do that well. And so we need to provide those tools for them, help them navigate the ecosystem, not just one small slice of it that we happen to think about.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm thinking about lately, is how can we help them do that?
There's a lot of experiences where it feels like as we enter into a relationship with a company, we're entering into a roller coaster, we're buckling up, and we're just going down a track. And the hope is that we don't crash. But when it comes to patient experience, there is no track. The patient is in control of this, which is good because they have the freedom to choose for themselves, but it's also terrifying and so scary. Brian, how do we do this?
Yeah, well, I like there's so many entry points into healthcare, and no two are alike. There's Jeannie shared a little bit about her experience. There's the trauma side of it. There's basic healthcare. There's routine. There's chronic healthcare that's delivered. All of those points of entry are different, and it's up to the patient to say, I have a need, and now I'm going to make myself vulnerable and go to another person or to a system to say, I need your help. I'm opening myself up to say, I need to feel better. I don't feel better.
Yeah.
But those different points of entry require different tools for them to be able to get in. In the basic sense, it's, can I easily schedule? How easy is it to get in? How easy can I find an appointment or find a provider? Then once I get in, do I understand what I'm going to see? Can I ask questions? Are the questions going to be answered? And then on the backside, how am I going to pay for this? Where is all this resource going to go of, because it's not inexpensive to do that. So each of those points needs intentional tools or intentional thought given to what can we provide the patient to make their job easier, to make their effort a little less, that customer effort. How can we
love that language, right, Nate?
Oh my gosh, I have the Bible of customer experience right here.
There you go.
That's where in the patient experience space, we're learning from other industries, trying to think about that customer effort. What is the patient effort, and how can we make it just a little bit easier so they can focus on themselves and not worry about what's next or what's down the road, because it's about them getting better.
There's such a story brand implication here. This idea of taking the spotlight off of you as the company and the service you provide and the experience I created. And then, no, you're not the hero of this story. It's the customer. It's the patient. And we get to be the guide. We get to facilitate their care. And when we shift the mentality that way, because it used to feel in healthcare like, we know you don't want to be here. We know that you got to the rock bottom point where you had to walk into this building, and now you're ours. You are trapped in this experience because we have you hostage. And now that mentality is shifting in such a good, positive way of, no, we're not going to hold you hostage. We're going to facilitate good care for you. Jeannie.
I want to give you a great example of that, because I just heard about this. Over the last year or so, there was a mental health crisis, right? Where people were really struggling and not knowing where to go. And one of the clinics, just a neighborhood clinic, started realizing this. And so they brought in licensed social workers. They brought in people right to their clinic so that the physicians who were treating the whatever on the physical side could say, you know what? It sounds like this is happening. Can I walk you over right now? Can we sit down and figure out the next steps? And part of why they did that was they realized that a lot of people were making appointments for mental health and weren't keeping them. And so they were able to really, in the moment when they recognized what was going on with the patient, to give them that option right away so that they could come up with a plan and walk out feeling like they knew what the next steps were. They had the different options. And I thought that was such a wonderful way to look at the patient's real life again. Like, yeah, you might be in here for a broken ankle, but if I hear you, talking about how hard things are, let's talk about that. Let's figure out your whole person. And I just thought that was a really nice example of exactly what we're talking about. Like, let's give them the tools in the moment that they need them so they can navigate the next step, so they can make the educated choice for whatever is next for them.
That's a great example.
I'm so amazed by that. I mean, what if we as CX professionals thought more that way?
We have to.
What is this journey that the customer's on? What does the definition of success look like for them? How can I get them to that next stage beyond this little touch point that I'm so hyper-focused on right now? Let me think bigger than this and think through the eyes of my customer or my patient.
Yeah, I think we always have to think more about our customers' real lives, because we love to make things linear as business people. We love to say, like, they're going to march through their journey just like we mapped it out for them. And, that never happens. We are humans. No. We have all these different stressors and everything. And so the more we can think about that, the better we can design the experiences.
I have this image in my head right now of, back to the roller coaster and like the choose your own adventure. Like, there's pods that we can design and develop, but then there's a whole bunch of different paths that people go on to get to the next pod. And you got to let them go through that path. We got to focus on this right here. And how can we help them get to the linear, from this to this, and then help them?
Yeah.
So we think that the customer journey should be a vehicle in which all they have is a brake. Where they can eject from the experience. But in reality, the customer experience is more like the Wonkavator. Where there's buttons and paths everywhere. Deviating, going sideways, and we do think so linearly, Jeannie. I've been doing this too in my journey mapping process. This is a wake-up call for me. I am designing a left to right process that is expected for me, for this persona to follow. That is dangerous.
Well, and I mean, we have to do some of this, right? Like, we have to have frameworks. We have to have things that help us think through these issues. And that's what journey maps really are.
Yeah.
What I see a lot is that people do a journey map not thinking of it as a tool, but thinking of it as like a deliverable, like a poster. And that's where I think we get into trouble, because then we expect everybody to look at that journey, and that's what happens. But of course, that's not what happens. It's a tool to help us think differently. But when it comes to, I mean, I mentioned the experience my family and I had. We happened to be out of state because we were on vacation, and the closest trauma center was actually across another state line.
Oh no!
And so by the time we got home and we were dealing with our injuries and things like that, we had been in like 4 different systems already, and they don't talk to each other. So it's all up to you as the patient. And I think that's where, if we could create those cross-functional teams that we see in CX sometimes, that if we could really think through that ecosystem and that journey, I think there's tons of opportunity for really, just amazing collaboration, amazing ways to put the customer, the patient, really at the center of things. But, that's really heavy lifting. And I respect that too, because we're talking about changing a lot of different things. But, I think there's opportunity there.
Well, punch 1 felt like the knockout punch. But let's keep rolling. This is incredible stuff. But let's move on towards our punch number 2, Brian. So we've talked a lot about the patient experience and the metaphor of the choose your own adventure. Well, on the other side of this is a group of people that are waiting to deliver an experience. How do we equip them?
Yeah. Well, I don't have the boxing gloves. I'm just gonna go like this. Well, so healthcare is a true team sport. We are in the business of managing human capital. Our output is the expertise of the providers that deliver that care, and they go through years and years and years of training. That's our product, if you will. So in order to deliver that that experience to the patient, we need to equip the workforce with the tools, the capacity, the understanding, the knowledge, the direction to deliver on that experience. And that's really where patient experience gets complicated, because now you're talking about having to influence the practices of individuals, their behaviors, their emotions, their styles, the way they do their business. And that's where it's hard. But what pleases me so much and why I get into this is because healthcare is truly a calling. We are in this because it is a calling, and people want to do the right thing. They want to help people get better, and they feel the frustration when they can't do it. And then it's our jobs to come in as operators and CX professionals to help navigate how can we make this just a little bit easier, not only for the patient, but also for the workforce. How can we make their jobs a little easier so what their focus is that patient, and not all the back end stuff that they need to flow through, or what comes next in the process, and who am I supposed to call, who didn't I call, why didn't I do that, rather than worrying about Jeannie or worrying about Nate.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I've never thought of this before, but I feel like the mental makeup between somebody that is entering into the healthcare field and someone who is entering into a contact center, there's probably a very similar mentality in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
About service.
It's about, absolutely.
But then so many things happen that can suck the soul out of that.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, protecting that experience. I love, we just heard from Mary recently around Cleveland Clinic and some of the things they're doing to operationalize empathy and to not just make this lip service.
Yeah.
I mean, Brian's comment about we're not just here to make people happy. It is deeper than that. There's a real set of psychology principles, but then also like scientific behaviors and processes that we can do together that will result in a better patient experience consistently and sustainably.
One of my growing pet peeves is when we use the terms like it needs to change, and also that we need to have training programs. Professionals in healthcare, they know what to do.
Yeah.
They know how to do it. We just need to enable them, each and every patient. And that's the difficult part, is it's every patient, every time.
Yeah.
And it's nonstop. There is no endpoint. There is no, we've achieved the goal. The second you think you achieve the goal, guess what? Tomorrow you're not achieving the goal because you've taken your mind off of it. Yeah. So it's every patient, every time.
Yeah. Well, and I think when we talk about tools for people too, I just read something about this nursing student I think in Pennsylvania, who realized that people don't get great sleep in hospitals. And there's all this research coming out now saying how important sleep is for health and how it's important for recovery and all these things. So he started asking, like, what can we do about this? Because the two options were trying to work in the dark and give good care that way, or turn on the big fluorescent lights above and wake everybody up. And so he developed a product that they hang around their neck. It's an LED light, and it provides night vision for nurses. Like, that's the whole goal. And I thought that was such a great example of, an employee being so empowered that they feel like there's an issue here. Let's solve it for our patients. It helps them feel like they're doing better work, but then the outcomes are going to be better, right? Like if people are getting better sleep, you can pretty much guarantee there are going to be better outcomes in recovery and things like that. So I think there is so much about that we don't talk about all the time in healthcare. We don't talk about ways to innovate in the patient experience realm with the people who are actually day-to-day doing it. Yeah. And so I love what I'm hearing about healthcare education and how they're focusing on empathy and helping, to be doctors and people like that really understand what it means to show empathy and why that's important. Because otherwise they're judged on clinical results and not necessarily patient experience. And now we're putting that all together into a much more like human, robust, cohesive experience. Yeah. So I'm really excited. And Brian, what you said is so true. They know what to do. They're incredible people. I mean, you go to any patient experience event and you hear amazing stories about people who have been cared for in these exceptional ways. And, amazing. I think that's all part of it is let's let them shine. Let's let them do what they do best, because they went into this for a reason. And it's exciting to hear about what's next, I think, too. I think this is all going up right now. Everybody's focused on it.
I can't help but think about Karen Hurt Do you know Karen, Jeannie?
Uh-huh.
She wrote, and David Dye, they wrote Courageous Cultures.
Okay.
And the premise is, it's all about how we trap ourselves in an environment, whether it's a healthcare environment or inside of a company, where great ideas like the one you just described, they don't have the ability to move forward.
Mm-hmm.
We quell those things. They just systematically die.
Yeah.
And there's not some rule book out there that's causing that. It's the culture inside of the organization that is designed to ultimately quell that. People feel overwhelmed. They feel like they're too busy. I can't take on another thing. I don't want to think about this. I'm not going to get credit for that. That's where we get a little dangerous and crazy here. But like the vast majority of employees or healthcare workers that have a great idea, they're like 80% likely to just sit on it and not even articulate the idea because they have seen so many great ideas fail. We have to change that.
You're right. And I love that idea of being courageous, because that's really what this is. And I think a lot of the culture too, like there was a great story about, in the thick of the pandemic when things were really bad, all the attending, all the people who are not necessarily high enough on the totem pole yet were giving their all, were incredible. And yet we're never like asked to decompress. And so some physician decided that was going to be her goal, was to help those residents and those people, those med students, all of those people who don't necessarily have the skills or the coping mechanisms yet. They have not been there. And she said it was something that she would literally walk into the room where they were all kind of doing their thing with the break. And she said 2 of them always wanted to leave. And she would stand in front of the door because she said they didn't want to talk about their feelings. They didn't want to talk about this stuff, but she wanted them to know that it was okay. Like this was a lot, and it's okay to be overwhelmed, and it's okay to feel bad, and it's okay to feel like you missed something, and that sticks with you. Like, let's talk about that, because by doing that, you can then build them up for that next time. You can help them have skills to share with other people who are struggling. And so I just thought that was so intuitive and like insightful, because doctors don't always talk like that, right? Like they don't always want to look like they don't know what they're doing. That's part of this. And so allowing them to be vulnerable in that space was really, really meaningful. And I think that's something we have to encourage in healthcare too. Like it's okay to be vulnerable as the people providing the care. That's a lot.
And you're not alone. They're not alone.
Not alone. Yeah. Yeah. Especially, I mean, what we've seen in the incredible caretaking in the last year, I think that's something that finally, other people started saying to healthcare providers, you're not alone, and we appreciate it. Even when we're not the ones who are necessarily benefiting directly, we know, we're recognizing, we see you. And I think that's really powerful.
There's such a beautiful evolution that is happening here. I mean, I've recently come across some incredible data from Tiny Pulse and from Tiny HR around how like 61% of people that are in a workplace environment have been helped by a coworker through a difficult situation. So that's us acknowledging that it's hard right now, expressing that vulnerability, and then people coming around us in our working environment to get us through it. That is a shift, because like I've always been just a sensitive person, and I've always just put my heart out on my sleeve at work. And I have been in trouble every single performance appraisal for the majority of my career, being told you gotta withhold your emotion. You're expressing too much. You gotta learn when to be happy and encourage people, but when you got bad stuff going on, you gotta learn how to shove that back down. And I couldn't do it. I still can't. And it still gets me in trouble sometimes, but like that's what drew me into Officium. Partly was, I mean, being in this type of environment where not only is that okay, but it's encouraged. And I have incredible coworkers that support me, that are building me up, that are admonishing me. I mean, Jonathan Schwar, sitting in Manchester, London, crying over pizza, just because I was overcome with self-doubt, being as a new consultant and all this travel, all this new stuff. And like, he just helped me in that moment and just gave me so much confidence that I could do it. And I am doing it. But like, without that moment right there, where he, as the CEO of a company, was able to reach into my vulnerability and help me. I don't feel like organizations used to do that, but now they are.
Well, I hope so. And I think whoever gave you those reviews, you need to send them all Brene Brown books because it's important. It's important.
It's awesome that we can bring our whole selves to work more and more. More and more, I feel like that is happening. That's good. And that is your role as a leader, I think, more than anything else, is to create an environment where it's good peer-to-peer relationships, where they can encourage each other. They can bolster each other up and be unified in delivering excellent patient care or delivering a great customer experience. We focus too much on our relationship to our people. That's like the tip of the iceberg. It's you getting to develop wonderful relationships with the entire team inside of the team together.
Related note to that, one of the things that we frequently talk about, both in the inpatient and the outpatient setting with everybody, is when you come in, do you know everybody's name with the team?
Yeah. Wow.
The team is not just the doctors and the nurses. There are a ton of other people, therapists, EVS, food services folks that are integral parts of the team and caring for that patient. Do you know their names? Do you even know their names? And if you don't, shame on you. You need to get to know each other. We are wired for connection, and it starts with creating that relationship with the whole team so you feel comfortable to talk to each other, so that when there are problems, especially in the healthcare space, you feel safe to speak up and say, do you really want to do that? That doesn't look right. Or are we doing the right thing? Because we're busy, we can miss stuff. And you want every member of the team to feel comfortable to be able to speak up for the benefit of the patient.
I love that you brought that up, because I think sometimes patient experience is seen as kind of the clinician and the, and it's food service, it's the people who clean the rooms, it's all of that. And so we need to respect that that's all part of this ecosystem, and they can make or break things. I mean, I always talk about when I had my babies, the women at the front desk of my OB office, you see them like once a week when you're pregnant. And so they get to know you and you get to know them. And it's just this wonderful feeling of being recognized as a patient, but you know that they're all working together on your behalf. And so I think there's something to that we're also starting to recognize with what we've just been through with COVID, because there were studies that basically said the people who clean the room have more to do with patient experience than some of the doctors, because they were there more frequently, they had relationships, their work had a direct impact on infection rate and things like that. So including the entire team, I think, it's a great point to bring up. And I think we just want to underline it. Like, think about who the team really is and what they're delivering for the patient and for each other.
Some of the most frequent names we see mentioned on surveys we get back from patients, and literal names, are the names of a transporter and a valet person.
Wow.
Yep.
Those are who the patients remember.
I remember my transporter because after we had our accident, I was actually in the hospital for 2 days, and we're all fine now. I always like to say that. But there was one day where they were doing x-rays and tests and, all over. And there was one person who brought me around to all of those things. And he had a huge impact on how I was feeling that day.
Wow.
He really did, because he was keeping my spirits up. He was telling me what's next. He was very communicative. And in those moments, like we talked about before, like in trauma, you're not really yourself. Like, I couldn't retain information. I couldn't see a plan in front of me. And especially when they're throwing around terms I didn't necessarily know. And so he would guide me through that. And just knowing that, when I came out of the MRI or when I came out of the things, he was going to be there and he was going to take me to the next thing and explain it to me. That was meaningful. And that was something that started to really make me feel like, okay, they're taking care of me. I'm getting better. Like it's a slow process in those moments after trauma, because you don't know what's happening. You're not yourself.
Wow.
There's a lot of information being thrown at you that you can't necessarily retain. I had a family I was also worried about. So, and so there were all these factors, and to have somebody like that really guide me was very, very meaningful. And I think I'm not terribly surprised that those are the names you see, because they make those connections.
Well, shout out to Colin Shaw and those that have been preaching the peak end rule,
Yep.
The valet.
Uh-huh.
It's your last part of the experience.
Yep.
And they're going to remember that so tangibly because that was the perception that ultimately formed probably a week's worth of other perceptions. But that last moment carries so much power.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
I'm going to try and do something here. Stick with me on this. So I've been reading Simon Sinek's Leaders Eat Last and Tribal Leadership. So, I mean, there's this amazing thing that Brian is talking about, the harmony of being in a tribe in which everybody knows each other's names and that you can be aligned in that small self-sustained community. As soon as it gets over 150 people and that becomes essentially impossible for the human brain, what happens is smaller tribes form naturally, or people become isolated and they drop out. And as soon as people become isolated, shifting over to Leaders Eat Last, cortisol, anxiety, stress, worry, we cannibalize ourselves because we have to be protected inside of a tribe where people know our names and we're working towards a common objective. As soon as we step out of the protection of that tribe, really, really bad things happen to our mentality and our health.
Wow.
Okay. Yeah, we got to create these tribes in our workplaces. I mean, Matt Dixon had that great article around reinventing customer service. It was a case study on T-Mobile about how they took a 3,000 seat contact center and broke it down into small tribes of 50 people that were self-sustained, that were geographically focused on a certain group of customers. And it was phenomenal, the results that they had. There's real power here.
There is. And I think to go back to Simon Sinek too, like people have to know the why. They have to know what they're doing. And
Indeed.
If you lose track of that, that's something that can really put everybody isolated too, because everybody then defines the why their own way.
Yeah.
And you've heard me talk about a customer experience mission statement and how important that is, because everybody has to understand not just what you're trying to do as an organization, but what are you trying to help your customers do? What's the end goal for them? And if you don't have that defined as a mission, it becomes like very tactical and it becomes very process oriented. But your people are, especially in healthcare, people are making judgment calls every single day that impact people. And if they don't have that North Star, then I might make a judgment call that's different based on my modality or based on my, my worldview or all these different things than you would, Brian. And so if we have that North Star and we all agree that's where we're going, that makes those types of things so much more well aligned and consistent throughout the organization and for the customer themselves.
I'm already knocked out. Theoretically, we're supposed to now have punch 3, our knockout punch, but I'm dead to rights. Let's go ahead and pop it up anyway. Let's finish this thing strong. Oh, goodness. Yes, right. Don't lose sight of the basics. Oh, my goodness. So, I mean, Brian, take us away on this one.
It's actually very simple. And to follow what the nice thing about healthcare is we do have a North Star. Are we keeping the patients safe, and are we delivering the outcomes they need to get better? That's the North Star that is inherently in the business, the line of work we're doing. And when we talk patient experience, don't lose sight of the basics. We get comments all the time, and there was just a great article in HBR written by Tom Lee from Press Ganey. They looked at thousands of comments, and they looked at the comments, at a micro level to think what's different about the great experience versus just the good experience. And it was the basic things like, were you kind? Was it courtesy? Did you know my name? Did you communicate with me? Did you show me respect? The basic human needs of connection. So you have a person who needs help. Are you extending yourself to help them? Are you listening to them? Are you delivering them the respect that they would deserve? And ultimately, I toy around with, I think it ultimately comes down to the golden rule, because at the end of the day, we're all patients ourselves at some point in time. Would I expect anything different from me or my loved ones? And why can't I give it to that person standing in front of me? It's as basic as that, I think. Yeah,
I think that, and really the basics of customer experience too. Like, waiting rooms matter. How long we wait matters. Do you respect my time? Do you respect my whole person? I mean, one of the things I talked about was I shattered my fourth metacarpal in that car accident and needed surgery. And it works great now. I'm very pleased. But I always felt like I was a fourth metacarpal for that doctor. And I never felt like I was a whole person.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that he's, clearly very clinically skilled. I got exactly the outcome I was looking for that. But it's one of those things that always stuck with me because I never felt like I was recognized as Jeannie. And I think that's one of those basics, but it's, we're finding that people are actually loving the virtual waiting rooms that have happened where they sit in their car with their phone, because waiting rooms, you can get sick from other sick people. So we're learning all of these things about what are those basics and how can we rethink those basics and just really respect the expectations of people and ask them, keep asking, what can we do to really serve you better? But I love what you said about being kind, because that's such a simple thing, right? But we all need those reminders, and we all need to just be aware that when we're doing something every single day, we know it so well, sometimes we forget that somebody else might be new to this, and we need to guide them a little bit more.
The best practitioners I see, before they walk in the exam room, they pause when they put their hand on the door, they take a deep breath, and they focus so that their time and attention is 100% the person in that room.
Wow.
Oh, that gives me chills.
That's incredible.
So let me throw a counter, like a 1-2 right here real quick about the basics.
Okay.
And that's simply just one of the things, you just spoke about virtual waiting rooms. One of the things that we're still learning in the healthcare space that we have to be careful of is the digital environment. And that goes back to number one. The customer experience space outside of healthcare is a lot going digital, right? It's how could we, do it all on these things. Well, what we have to be careful of in healthcare is healthcare needs that connection. You need to feel like you understand and are listening, and how much of that can be delivered in a virtual environment. What's the right mix of virtual versus in person? My opinion, it can't all be on this. We need the physical touch. We need the feel like we're being cared for, and that has to be human to human, person to person in that care aspect. Now, all that to be said, there is a place for this, and there are aspects of healthcare delivery that are going to be perfect for that, but it's not everything, and we got to figure that out. And that's all being developed and designed as we speak to figure that out.
And it's context, for the person that you're serving, for the reason they're coming to you, all of those things. And I think part of what we have to acknowledge is that people want the same things in some ways. They want convenience. They want to get a few hours back in their day and all of those things. So if there are ways to provide choices around that, I think that's where we're really going. And we've seen, I talked about the mental health thing. Some virtual options were incredibly well received. They did incredible things for people who otherwise wouldn't have been served. And so that's another aspect of this, is who can we reach with some of these channels that we haven't been able to reach before? And that's, I think it's a mix, and it's all about going back to the beginning, understanding who our patients are and what they want, and giving them the tools, and then giving the people who provide them these services the tools. So that's all you have to do.
Easy peasy.
We just solved it in 40 minutes. We're good.
Yeah, exactly.
I've been thinking about when we're thinking about this, the digital experience, we should be thinking about what is success here. And usually it's around seamless experience, effort reduction, frictionless design. That's usually what we're striving for. But then when we get to do a human to human interaction, let's blow that up. Let's celebrate that. Let's excel for something different in those interactions where we get to make that really good and special in a different way. It's just thinking about what does loyalty look like in these different channels, in these different ways, and let's strive for it.
Yeah.
Awesome stuff. Well, this has been incredible. Jeannie, Brian, you're both luminaries in this space. You're helping so many people. Thank you for what you do every day to make these principles come to life. We so appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Is there any parting words, Jeannie, that you wanted to leave behind here?
I just want to thank all the people in healthcare. I really do, because I think every single day there are heroes who are unrecognized, They can be serving the food, they can be welcoming people, they can be operating on people. I mean, it's all throughout the healthcare system. People like Brian who run these programs, who do things. I mean, there are amazing people, and I'm so grateful. And whenever I tell my story about my family, I always talk about that too, because we had amazing people every step of the way.
Truly, Brian, we're blown away by you, by Vanderbilt. My daughter had a procedure at Vanderbilt, and it was unbelievable how great the experience was, how kind the people were. You're doing something special. So thank you. Any parting words that you have, Brian, for us?
Well, one, thank you, Nate, for having this conversation, for bringing insight to it. Jeannie, for all you do across all the organizations you work with. The thought leadership is tremendous. And I think you said it so well, Jeannie. Thank you. All of you are heroes in the healthcare space. You truly are. You're making a difference each and every day, and you don't even realize it. There are lives you touch that you will never hear from again, that you didn't know the effect you had on that person, and you did. They are different because of the work that you do each and every day. So thank you to all of the healthcare professionals. You guys are truly rock stars.
Awesome. A special brand of customer experience is patient experience. I just love it. Very good. Well, I hope there's been wisdom, encouragement in here for anyone, regardless of what X you represent: employee experience, digital experience, customer experience. I know that these two just drop some serious KO punches on all of us. I am definitely going to go back and revisit some of my mentality around my journey mapping process. So definitely some big takeaways for me. But for everyone out there, until our next episode, thank you, and let's make experiences that matter.
Thanks for listening to the Experience Matters podcast, your 1, 2, 3 punch to overcome CX challenges. For more information on making experiences that matter, visit www.officiumlabs.io or connect with us on LinkedIn.